Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back on a Hong Kong content review, doing my very first video on the Shaw Brothers Vol.3 box set edition, which came out about last month. I've still got quite a few to go on volume 1 and 2, but I've got some ideas on how I want to tackle them. I tend to do kind of themes, and I kind of go into different rabbit holes of groups of types of movies, just my own kind of internal process and how I watch stuff. And I figured I would start this set with a recommendation for the Magic Blade, thanks to my pals at the Mic'D Avengers on Spotify and available on YouTube. This features Fanatical Dragon, Martial Arts 30,000 and FIFA Force, which have done a really fun little collaboration together in terms of a podcast talking about some specific movies, some Shaw Brothers films, ones that are big fans of or maybe first time seeing them. And I've listened to most of that podcast. I didn't want to do all of it, so I wanted to go in with this one relatively blind and kind of experience the film for myself. I would absolutely recommend going and checking a podcast available on Spotify and on YouTube, and tell Andrew sent you. It's definitely a lot of fun. Definitely feel like your Shaw Brothers and Hong Kong material. Absolutely recommend it one, guys, for sure. Magic Blades released in 1976, written by Chor Yuen, which I've not seen any of his films. I'm familiar with this director. In fact, he's done a lot of other Shaw Brothers movies, and I think a few other movies on this edition as well. So I'm quite excited to check out more from this director and just kind of see what kind of material I'm going to get from him. You know, each kind of Shaw Brothers director has got a very unique kind of style or signature, or they tend to do the same type of film over and over. I'm curious to see what this director is going to do in terms of my viewing experience. And you may have noticed as well, I've got the sword on this shelf as well. That'll be my next review coming up. I did both of these films as a back-to-back, and I felt it was very appropriate and very good in kind of tone and kind of in storyline, kind of in this idea of the old Shaw Brothers movies versus the kind of the Hong Kong New Wave. So I'm looking forward to talking more about that and the similarities and the kind of the talking point of Shaw Brothers versus the kind of the Golden Harvest take on a kind of traditional Shaw Brothers type movie from the sword. So stay tuned for that one, guys. The Magic Blade stars T. Long as our main protagonist character, very much a kind of spaghetti western, Clint Eastwood kind of, figure, very much in the vein of kind of western movies, obviously with his kind of like, his saddle, with his kind of almost gunslinging kind of, whipping kind of sword, this kind of dual action kind of sword, very kind of one-armed swordsman, but has this kind of rotation of it as well. How he slings it back in place. It's very much a kind of image and the look of a kind of, Clint Eastwood Western type character. Not to mention we also have Lo Lei in the film, our secondary main character, which is the opposite swordsman, next to Tai Lung's character as well in the film. Now, the storyline for the Magic Blade, I'm going to try and explain to the best of my ability without giving away too many spoilers, and kind of give you a general idea how bonkers this film is in terms of its kind of overarching story, its ambitious type of story it's trying to do, and the many kind of underlings and kind of, henchman characters and just kind of really bombastic ideas. Very ahead of its time in terms of late 70s going into the 80s. Definitely very ambitious for Shaw Brothers. Definitely does a lot of the traditional stuff, but also trying to be experimental a little bit in terms of some of the more kind of weaponry-based work, double crosses, some of the henchman characters have gimmicks. It's all a lot of fun. It's all kind of like very pleasing to kind of watch on screen, and some of it works, some of it doesn't, but I'll get into that as we go along. The storyline for the film basically follows our two main swordsman characters. They've had a previous duel about a year ago prior. They've come back on the anniversary of that duel to basically find out who is going to be number one, essentially, of the swordsman kind of, ranks. A very similar theme that we've seen in quite a few of films, one on swordsman, which makes a lot of sense why this is on this edition, talking about this idea of honor and respect and kind of status, and this idea of being number one. It can be quite lonely. It can be everyone wants to try and kill you, something that the kind of the sword goes into, but I'll get into that another time. So it's very appropriately kind of similar kind of themes and very similar ideas that have been done quite a few times within Shaw Brothers and in other movies as well. Now, back on this film, these two characters are basically going to have a duel to the death. One, they are interrupted by the kind of wood assassins, kind of henchman assassin characters, which are very expensive, very wealthy, kind of, highly skilled kind of assassins, which are not, because they're taken down very quickly, very easily, saying no one gets to kill you but me. We had a pact, we had a deal. I am the one who's going to end your life, as in terms of the best swordsman, and I can't have these other whippy assassins, other people getting in the way of that. So let's find out who has done this, let's deal with it, and then we can get back to our kind of duel, essentially, which I think is quite a cool premise. It's quite badass, and it's pretty fast paced for the first portion of that film. The fact they go to this kind of tavern bar, and the fact he's very much like a Sherlock Holmes / Batman character. He's kind of very observant, very intelligent. You kind of notice that some people were not where they should be in terms of their clothing, in terms of their items. As the film goes along, both these characters are taking out these kind of would-be assassins. All leads to this kind of grand master plan, essentially where the film gets a bit bonkers and a bit crazy with this idea of the world's greatest assassins, the ultimate battle of martial arts swordsman characters, and this legendary figure called Master Yu, which essentially is this kind of mystic kind of figure character, someone behind the shadows, someone who is calling all the shots, someone who is unbeatable, someone who is the #1 and has 5 henchmen underneath him, all various kind of cartoonish kind of gimmicks. And I like the fact the film actually just kind of lean into some of that, with one of the characters actually being an actual fraud and just kind of was doing all these gimmicks to kind of have scare tactic as kind of war paint, and is not a swordsman, doesn't know how to fight, and just there to kind of intimidate and scare. I like the fact they kind of acknowledge that, a little bit of self-awareness, which I think is quite good. Some of these kind of whippy kind of henchman characters are very much a kind of almost a Batman villain. You want to say a discount Batman villain. Some are really cool, some are not great, some are just a mixture in quality, but they all have their own gimmicks, one including a chess game which gets interrupted, which, you know, I just think is quite funny and quite weird. And then you've got Granny Devil, I believe, which is kind of like a cannibal old lady that's does really impressive backflips and just kind of has a very unique kind of presence on screen, very cartoonish, very over the top and very fun. And you've got this mystical shadow organization, which basically wants to kind of take down both of these swordsman characters, because again, they want to be #1, they want to control all of the swordsman characters and have them all underneath one kind of clan organization, whatever you want to call it, essentially. Through these series of events that take place, they realize this, and then through the middle part of the film, they have to come across this, and they have to kind of seek and find this legendary kind of weapon called this Peacock fan. Now, it's a bit confusing because the fact the title is called the Magic Blade. I would have thought this would be the legendary swords blade, whatever it is, but it's not. It's a kind of peacock kind of dart-based weapon, which basically, when you take off one of the darts of it, essentially, it can throw up to 5 feet, and it will do multiple explosions within that distance. It's very powerful, very destructive, very much like a lightning kind of bolt, essentially. It destroys everything in its wake. It's a very deadly, very serious weapon, which everyone is trying to get. It's located on one place, and it's secured by multiple kind of other clans and other people and other gods, and it has kind of like a very Temple of Doom kind of feel towards it, which is quite cool. And they have to kind of find this weapon and use it to basically defend themselves, to go against the kind of the 5 henchmen and Master Yu alongside it. And that's where the film kind of jumps on, goes about, and the plot is very loose, it's very crazy, it's very bonkers, and, you know, I can see why people do like this film. I can see why people do get behind it. I can see some comparisons to other movies. I thought The Magic Blade, in terms of the whole package, I felt it was a fun time. I don't think it was my favorite film. I don't think it's something that I'm going to be raving about too much. I felt the film was entertaining, but I do think it had some issues in terms of the pacing, in terms of some of the characterization, and I think the story was a little bit too over the place. Really strong with that first kind of half an hour, and then it kind of slows down. It gets a bit kind of lost to where it wants to go in terms of direction-wise. Again, it's still having a lot of gimmicks, still having a lot of downtime in places, and it's not really going anywhere specifically that interesting, and then picks back up again and then drops and kind of goes up and down. I honestly felt at times the film was spinning its wheels a little bit too much for my liking, and while I did enjoy the action, I don't think the choreography, I don't think the fight scenes were that great. Ultimately, I felt they were fun. I felt they, you know, it made me laugh at times. I think it was charming. I do think a lot of the dialogue, you know, in terms of some of the one-liners and some of the kind of the interactions weren't that great, if I'm being honest. I kind of back and forth kind of smack talk that most of these kind of Shaw Brothers or Golden Harvest movies do have. There was a little less of that. It was more towards the end of the third act of the film, which I appreciated, but I felt it was just a little bit lacking in some of those ideas. And, you know, by the end of it, me and my friend had kind of a similar kind of opinion. We enjoyed our time with the film. I thought it was an entertaining film. We got what we wanted out of it. Would I be raving about this film? Am I saying you need to watch this film? I would say, absolutely watch it, part of the edition, part of the set. Whether you're going to get more enjoyment than myself out of it is another question. Third act of the film, I think, is the most interesting in terms of the kind of how it all comes together, in terms of this kind of organization with Master Yu, and you know, the fact they're kind of tempting him with kind of women and wealth and power. And I like the ultimate conversation that I've seen this kind of talk before within many of the movies. One on swords of movies is the same thing again. This idea of, if you defeat X, Y, and Z kind of thing. You can be number one. We can give you money. We can give you power, and we can give you respect and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you'll be the best swordsman in all of the land, essentially. And this character doesn't want that. He's a very cool, kind of reserved kind of protagonist character, someone who has been through some stuff. He has sacrificed his hometown, his love interest, and friendship and companionship and all that to be a very lonely, kind of wandering, traveling kind of swordsman character that is seeking to be number one, but realize in this film particularly as well that he does not want that. He doesn't want to be the kind of number one guy, which in all of it, which is something that's an interesting kind of conversation just happened with our main villain towards the third act of the film, which I think is quite interesting. And it's kind of like a mirror, kind of like opposite of like a yin and yang, which I think is a good talking point within these kind of swordsman-based movies. It's something that's been explored already prior to this, and obviously especially within this one as well. Overall, The Magic Blade was a really good starting entry for the kind of the director. For the first time I've seen one of his films, it's a really good start for the Shaw Brothers Vol.3 set as well. Definitely a good starting point in terms of the themes of where this set is going to go in terms of more sword blade based kind of storylines and, you know, classic kind of Shaw Brothers kind of ideas. I'm very curious to see how the rest of these kind of movies develop as they go along with this director and many of the movies on this edition. Absolutely for sure. I felt the film was very ambitious. I definitely think it was definitely going for the kind of the big spectacle. It definitely had the budget behind it. This definitely was a very expensive Shaw Brothers film just based on those kind of locations and set designs and the crazy kind of weaponry work. And I like the fact the film was meta and it was having fun. It was having over-the-top cartoonish villains. It had some pretty unique characters. While I do think it was a bit light on character development, they were kind of very brief in terms of how they want to explore them too. Our main two characters mainly. Too many side characters, I felt. There were too many little subplots that I didn't think was as satisfying as it could have been. I think it could have been a little bit more condensed. I definitely think the film gets a bit lost within its own ideas towards the middle part of the film. Definitely really slows down and gets a bit kind of, you know, aimless or where it wants to go. Characters vanish and come back, you know, double crosses and secret identities and a kind of MacGuffin kind of weapon, the Peacock weapon, which is cool, but doesn't get really used, isn't really that important, if I'm being honest, in terms of the overall film. I like the bigger message, the bigger ideas of the film where it's trying to go for these more simplistic idea of a kind of Clint Eastwood Western type character, like our, you know, with this kind of really fancy kind of weapon that kind of slots in, which is badass, it's cool. And this idea of being the lonely kind of swordsman. We're in a time and a place where everyone wants to kill you, where everyone wants to be number one, where everyone wants to kind of take over the world and how be rich and powerful and wealthy and how women and all sorts. And just overall, this character doesn't want any of that. He wants to honor a duel that he had a year prior and then go home. So yeah, go and check out The Magic Blade and go and check out the Mic'D Avengers podcast and on YouTube as well, which they discuss this and deep dive into this, which I'm going to go back soon and see what their opinions are after kind of watching the film myself. So what are your thoughts and opinions on The Magic Blade? Please comment down below. What are your thoughts and opinions on this idea of the wuxia style kind of swordsman, the lonely kind of swordsman character storyline? Do you think this film was better than most, or which one would you say which is the best of the edition so far in terms of this kind of like this running theme of swordsman movies? Please comment down below. So meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.